Good morning. I'm delighted to see you all here, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Thank you so much for coming to the last morning of the conference. We've got a lot to get through today. We've got some great speakers, experts in the field. We've got Philip Sheldrake, Tim Marclane, Katie Payne, Mike Daniels, and we've got Don Bartholomew, who'll be joining us via satellite from the United States. Unfortunately, Don wasn't able to come to the conference, but very kindly even offered to get up at 4 a.m., although we've finally agreed 6 a.m., and Don will be joining us via satellite link. But I'm conscious that there'll be a few heavy heads, perhaps. It was a great event last night. I think massive congratulations to Barry and Nicola and the organisation team. So quick clap for last night. But also huge congratulations to everybody in the audience who won awards. Well done. I suspect there'll be a few sore heads, so I've brought you along a virtual hair of the dog. And if anybody actually does get a bit itchy, a bit nervous, there is a pint, but I'm putting it here. It will definitely make you feel better, but you have to go through the humiliation of running to the front to grab it. But please do help yourselves. So I've been the chair of the AMEC Social Media Measurement Group for the last year. Obviously, I'm director at Gorkana as well. It's an important session for all of us today because every single one of us in this room faces challenges. And I've put up what I'd call nine things that we know on this slide. We know that social media is a huge concern for organisations of all shapes and sizes around the world as they think about how do they structure to cope with it and how do they prove the value of the work that they're doing in it. We know that all the extra content that it creates should be a massive opportunity for us. We know our clients are citing it as their number one concern. We know we should be making lots of revenue from social media, and yet we fear that we're not. And just to point to that, in the International Business Monitor survey that AMEC does, 85% of our members said that clients were asking them and concerned about how to measure social media, which should be a great statistic. However, only 31% of the work that AMEC members do actually is social media. So there's a disconnect between the client request, the client demand, and what we're actually doing. And our fear, I think, is that perhaps this work is going outside of us and going to other disciplines. And there was some research that Adobe published just this week. They interviewed 1,700 digital marketers. And 56% of them, when asked what one strategy were they going to do to improve their social media next year, was a focus on social media measurement. So we know there's this big demand, but somehow we're not monetizing it. And I think that one of the challenges that we face is to help the PR industry as it faces its challenges to change. We know that the PR industry is coming into more and more contact with other marketing disciplines which used to be siloed. And as the PR industry struggles to prove the work that it's doing in social media, we need to really be helping them with that. And I think the big point there is that we need to set leadership. We need to come together. We need to help with education. And I think in the absence of other people who are going to do the education, it's up to each of us in this room and our organisations to go out there and to do our bit to preach how to do social media measurement in the correct way. Confusion reigns, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but a final sort of thought I'd just say on this slide is that we know that solving these problems isn't going to be easy. I know there's a mass pent-up demand for a number that we could perhaps produce to help clients understand what value they're getting from their social media. There's never been a silver bullet to PR measurement, and there certainly isn't a silver bullet to social media measurement. This is going to take time, and it's going to be frustrating at times. It's not going to be easy, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible, and it doesn't mean that we can't have some small victories and important steps along the way. Backing all this up is, of course, the survey, and thank you to those of you who filled it out. Barry sent it out last week. So of the delegates, here, we asked you all what were the things that concerned you the most. And the top 4 things were multiple definitions of the same terms was causing problems, different methodologies in the industry being used, better education, my personal bugbear, and greater transparency. And I thought it was fantastic that basically the people in this room, the people at this conference, if we all think the same thing, then perhaps we can all work on it together. So confusion reigns. You know, in summary, what are the reasons we believe that it causing the confusion? Well, inconsistent data across different providers, inconsistent terminology. We heard Andre Manning talk about this yesterday and other people during the conference. Inconsistent approaches to measurement, lack of flexibility, particularly from the platforms. Platforms that focus on easy metrics, not counting, not measuring what matters, but counting the stuff that's easy to capture. And that there isn't a single solution to different needs and different definitions. And this all points to the difficulty that our clients have in really showing impact and value. And the sooner we can help them to do that, the better. And that's what Don will be telling us a little bit more on some thoughts on that. So I find this particularly frustrating, because it wasn't that long ago that we came together in Barcelona, and although Barcelona was pretty basic stuff, it helped the industry say, you know what, we're going to move away from the spurious metrics of the past, and we're going to focus on measuring outtakes and outcomes. And while we were congratulating ourselves on that, what was happening was that the rise of social media had created the rise of social media monitoring platforms, largely built by software as a service organizations, who were basically reinventing, when their clients started to ask them to show a bit of measurement, were reinventing the ways to measure communications and coming up with these metrics that just didn't matter. And in the absence, in the void of our industry talking loud and talking strongly about how to do this properly, the PR industry has seen these metrics and just started to adopt them, and a lot of them are very flawed. So I want to go into, to set the scene for today, just some of these. And those of you who attended Mazen's session in the workshops on the first day heard him talk about basically the way that clients have 4 different options when they're choosing a way to do social media measurement. And one is free, one is software as a service, one is human, and one is hybrid. And so I thought, well, let's just have a look at some of the problems with free. And I've just done a very basic example of a brand for indigestion, just because it's a pretty unique word, called Gaviscon. If you bung this into Google, and I'd ask you all to do this sort of stuff yourself when you get home, put it into Google, see how many results you get. You find that there's nearly 2 million results come. But of course, that's not that's not sophisticated, I hear you say. We'd do a better monitoring than that. We'd perhaps limit it by country, we'd limit it by time period, and we'd put it into the news section. So when you start to do that, I've done it here, put it into the UK only, filter it by the last week, you get the end of Google, and because it's such a unique word, you can see that we get to page 20. When you actually click onto page 20, you find that the number that Google presents at the top has now dropped significantly from the number that it first presented, even when we put these first filters in. So the temptation to someone using some of these type of free tools, and we've all done it, we've all done a Google search for our own name or our own company, you see like it says millions of hits, but it's an algorithm-based number, it's not an actual number, and that total number is really rather meaningless, and more on that in a minute. Then of course there's the software as a service organizations, and they have beautiful platforms, they all look absolutely fantastic. There's been a proliferation of them. There's over 220 of them, according to Ken Burberry and his wiki that he keeps of them all. All of them, as I was saying, are capturing the data that's easy to capture, but not the stuff that really matters. And in this absence of education and leadership and our industry really speaking out, this is what our clients are basing themselves on. And of course, the other benefit that they've got is anyone can buy beautiful-looking charting software nowadays, and so you could get people just literally setting up in their attic and building a social media monitoring platform. So my call to the industry is to avoid what I call chart porn. We've got to look at these charts for what they actually are. They're shallow and they're meaningless, and then they're not a proper relationship with your measurement. But more cynically, when you look at these platforms, and Gorkana Group did this about a year and a half ago, but there's many examples if you search on the web for them. If you search for comparison of social media monitoring platforms, you'll find that the data that they report is massively inconsistent. And let me just show you a couple of examples from this. So this was a while ago, a year and a bit ago, and some of you may have seen this before, but we asked a whole variety of these big platform companies, the companies that you'll all be familiar with. We gave them a search term, a complex search term for one of our clients, a 2-week time period, and we asked them to send all of their data to us, and then we analysed it and checked it and looked at it. And you can see here one of the highlights of what came back was the significant difference in that absolute number between these different platforms. So the platform that found the most found nearly 500,000 posts in that time, and the platform that found the least found just over 280,000. Perhaps a bit difficult to see on the slide, but the colours there represent the total volume and actually how much of that content was relevant. And what we found was that 40% of the content on average was irrelevant. So there was spam, there was porn, there was bots, all kinds of stuff like that, or just content that just shouldn't have been in there, which was being sent back to us. 2 of the 5 companies that we trialled actually had outages during the 2-week period, which if you're using a platform you wouldn't be aware of, but because we were getting a feed of the content through to us, we could see this happening. And when we took all of the content and grouped it into one universe, and then looked to see how much of that content all of the companies had found, it was only 20%. So this to me questions a metric that's been the mainstay of traditional media analysis and the PR industry for a long time, which is absolute numbers. You know, how many clips did we have? It doesn't work in social media. The number is becoming more and more irrelevant, and we need to make sure that our clients understand this and help them to move on. There's a big debate about measuring sentiment, and there's arguments for humans doing it, there's arguments for automation doing it, and my personal belief is that I think that both have their place at the right and appropriate moment. There's absolutely, we all have to accept that our model of, the old model of humans reading each and every clip, charging our clients a fee per clip, is not going to work into the future. It just can't scale, and that automation, of course, is coming. But automation, you know, huge debates about which is more accurate, but automation does struggle with things. And here's an example from the London riots. Nando's is a fried chicken restaurant. I've got a slight addiction to it. And this is actually a tweet from somebody who loves her Nando's, but she's very upset that the rioters have smashed it up. Now, I would say that this is exactly the type of article that a piece of software would struggle to get accurate. I'm not saying that humans get everything accurate instantly, because they don't. Of course they don't. But it's the kind of example of why you get results like this. And this is when we looked at the sentiment across these companies. They'd all coded the coverage as neutral, favourable or unfavourable. So effectively they had a 1 in 3 chance of getting it right. When we checked it, and we got 3 analysts to check 500 posts, this is the levels that we found. Now, a lot of these platforms are claiming 70, 80, 90% accuracy levels. And I think that when you really peel back the skin, you find that they're nowhere near there. And in fact, you can see that one of the companies actually did worse than chance. So we could all have guessed. But of course, we could even all have been more sophisticated than that. And actually, if we'd all said, we're going to call all of this content neutral, you would be about 60% right. So you'd be up there with the best of, in this example, the best of the solutions, just by doing that. So I think the point is here that we need to be careful about what we're explaining to our clients. We need to be transparent about how we've done the analysis and about the different methodologies. Now, Philip is going to talk to us in a minute about influence in great detail, but influence, of course, is a huge hot topic, and I just wanted to touch on it this morning. Everybody in the room, I'm sure, has heard of Clout. I think, Katie, what do you call it? The AVE, the new AVE or something. Of course, it calls itself the It calls itself the Standard for Influence, which winds a lot of people in this room up. There's other tools like it. There's Peer Index and Cred. I went on to Klout this morning to check my Klout score, and I was 51. So I was pretty pleased with that. Take a bow. Thank you. But I then was disappointed because I then thought, well, I'll look at some other tweeters. And in London, we have the Big Ben clock, which tweets on the hour, every hour, and tells us the time. So what it does is it chimes out. It chimes out the time, and it rings the bell. So it goes bong, bong, bong. And what Klout does is it also tells you the topics that you're influential about. And I don't understand this, but because Big Ben keeps talking about drugs, about bongs, apparently it's influential about drugs. When I looked at what I was influential about, it did mention something to do with public relations and PR measurement, which I was pleased about, but it also said I was influential about the Super Bowl, and I have never watched a game of American football in my life. I've certainly never tweeted about one or made a Facebook comment or anything like that. It said I was influential about banking. If you could see my bank balance, you would realize that I'm not. And perhaps, I don't know, I don't tend to tweet about food, but it thought that, that I was influential about food too. Maybe it got that one right, I don't know. I enjoy my food. Something as we move towards credible metrics and the debates that rage, I think that's really important from an AMEC point of view, is that our membership, and we've all seen this over the last couple of days, I think was it 29 countries, Barry, is that right? 29 countries represented here. We're an international organisation, and the marketplace moves at different speeds and has different needs. And it's very easy to focus on Western Europe and America when we debate this stuff, but that would be the wrong thing to do. And what I've got here, this is data that just came out again this week, is the world map of social networks. And you can see that this is the number one, the colours here represent the number one social network in each region. So the blue is, of course, Facebook, and you can see it's dominant in the Americas and in Europe. But when you move across to Eastern Europe and Asia, it's other networks that are dominating. And we need to think about how do we monitor them accurately, how do we measure them accurately. A lot of countries, even text messaging is still more popular than a lot of these networks. So we need to consider this type of thing. And I appreciate this slide will be difficult to see, but I wanted to put it in so that when you download the slides, if you do, you've got this data as well, because this is the data behind it. So this is the, bless you, Katie. This is the top 3 networks by all of those countries, and you can see how much difference there is in all of them. And social media is obviously cross-border, and as we look to measure it and set any kind of standard, anything like that, we need to bear in mind that different international needs have different things. So this sort of need for transparency and proper metrics, I think it really came to light a few years ago when I sat with a fair degree of horror in the audience when this gentleman appeared. I don't know if anyone recognises him, Mr. Martinson, Neil Martinson, who was the head of communications at the Central Office of Information in the UK. And he stood up and he said, he hadn't told anybody he was going to do this, and he said, I have commissioned 5 AMEC members to do the same piece of work, and I'm now going to present the differences in their reports. And I know we all felt a bit like, oh my God, we're getting ambushed here. And it was for one of the government agencies. It had 138 pieces of coverage. And Neil highlighted the differences that were being reported back to him. So he said that in my 5 different analysis reports I've got here, he said one company said that 17% of our coverage was favourable, and at the other extreme, a company said that 100% of our coverage was favourable. He said when talking about who the content was exposed to, the reach, he said one company at one end of the spectrum said 46 million people, and one at the other end said 93 million people. And what I feared was that he was going to say, you know, you're all stupid and you can't agree with each other. But to be fair to him, what he went on to say was that what the problem was, and he was absolutely right on this, is that we were all analysing the content in different ways and using different methodologies. One was an OTS measure, one was impressions, and one of them was a disaggregated reach number. So you would expect these to be different numbers. But the confusion in the client's mind, particularly if we're careless with our terminology, if we all start calling OTS reach when it isn't, it's no wonder that clients get confused. So we need to address that, and we've got some news on that today. So we need transparency for the industry, we need better terminology, we need better consistency, we need better education, we need better leadership, we need better collaboration as well, not just within our industry. And obviously the AMEC group is working with what we call the coalition, which I think it was explained yesterday, Tim wears about 5 hats from the coalition, but with the CPRF and the Global Alliance and the IPR as well. But we need to move beyond the PR industry as well. Social media is taking us out of just public relations. We all know that social media affects an organisation throughout all sorts of different disciplines within it. And we need to work with other market disciplines. And the need for this became very clear yesterday in my emails when this, an email about this turned up. So this was the Market Research in the Mobile World Conference, who are going to set a framework for global benchmarking social media research imminently, and they're doing it with P&G, Coca-Cola, Ford, BBDO, and it sounded awfully familiar. Here's yet another organisation kind of in our space looking to set benchmarks, frameworks, and perhaps moving on to standards. And so for that reason, there's a group that you've probably heard about called the Conclave, where we're moving beyond just the PR and communications industry and looking to bring in other organisations, people like WAMA and the IAB and different brands as well, to help us with the social media measurement standards. And for that reason, you end up with a situation where it's going to take a long time. It is like herding cats because these different organisations run at different speeds. They have different approaches to the rigour and the academia and all of this kind of stuff. So to come up with an agreed standard is something that is going to be difficult, it is going to take a long time, and I want everybody to understand that so that you don't get frustrated. But what that doesn't mean is that we can't help the communications, the PR industry, to move forward with credible metrics and the right approach to advise our clients so that we can do that leadership and the education that is so desperately missing and needed. So 3 things that my colleagues who are talking today are going to unveil to everybody are these, 3 deliverables, if you like, today. So first of all, a lot of work has gone into what we're calling the methodology grid or the transparency table. What this is, and Tim Marclane will tell us a little bit more about it later on this morning. But this is a methodology that we would like AMEC members and the wider community to use in their reports. We're very aware that everybody does stuff in a slightly different way, and we don't want to be prescriptive about how you should do it. It certainly doesn't say that automated sentiment analysis is better than human. All it's doing is it's saying, please fill in and make it very clear to the client how you have done all these different components of your report, so that when a client reads a report from one organisation and reads a report from another organisation, we won't have that same problem that Neil Martinson had in not understanding why perhaps the numbers look different. So that's going to help us talk to the transparency and the terminology. And further work on the terminology is this AMEC Plain Speaking Guide to Social Media Measurement, which we're launching today. Philip and Stephen Waddington, who some of you might know, but again, Stephen couldn't be here today, have done a huge amount of work on this. It's going to go up on AMEC's website straight after the conference. It's got a whole load of different terms, and they're correct what they actually mean. And we would ask you to take a look at it. If you've got feedback on it, it has a feedback mechanism. Please feed it back to us. We'll update it on a monthly basis to keep it current and the definition's correct. But it gives us all a point that we can all say, these are the definitions of the words that I'm talking about, so that the confusion of people calling OTS reach or whatever stops happening. And then Mike Daniels is going to talk to us about an updated social media measurement valid metric framework. Now, one of the things that's made me most proud of our AMEC membership over the years has been, since the Barcelona Principles, as I've gone to different clients and prospects and conferences around the world, the number of people who put their hands up and say, well, I found this valid metrics framework and it really helped me think about how to set objectives and how to measure properly, and it's brilliant. And you hear participants at these conferences raving about it. I think it is hugely important as an educational tool for our industry. And Mike and Katie and Tim and a number of people have put a lot of work into updating it so that it's relevant for our needs today. We'd ask you, we've got a little case study which we're going to show you where we've put the work, Katie was UNICEF, was it? Is that right, UNICEF? We've put the UNICEF case study that Katie did yesterday into the valid metrics framework to show you how it might work. We accept that, I would stress it is a framework. That means that you don't have to use every bit. There may be bits that aren't appropriate. There may be bits that need to be added. We would welcome your feedback as we see it as a tool that will change as appropriately. So those are 3 deliverables which my colleagues are going to unveil today. I'm going to hand over to Philip, who's going to talk to us about influence in a lot more detail than I just did. But before I do that, if anybody has a question, then I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, we can go straight on into Philip. So any questions so far? Yes, a question at the back. Yes, please remember your name, and there's a little prompt from Barry. It's electric shock I got there. Please, your name and your company.
Yeah, my name is Durgesh Garg. I am from Impact Research India.
Yeah.
And the question which I have is, we are talking about social media measurement. See, I am not sure about in this part of the world, though I guess it is same as what we have in India. When we go and talk to a client about social media and measurement, most of the clients say that we already have an agency in place. So typically, this is the digital arm of the ad agencies who are also competing in the same space, and they are playing the role of listening as well as engaging. So how do media measurement companies, compete with that? Just your views, and I hope I'm able to make it clear.
I guess one thing I might ask them to do is to show me and explain what they're currently getting, and ask them what their frustrations with it are. If there's something that they could have that was better, what would it be? So if they could change something about what they're getting. It's difficult for me to know because I don't know the type of stuff that they're getting. Are they getting it largely from platforms? If they're getting it from platforms, it's probably the metrics that don't matter rather than the metrics tied around their communications objectives. If you've had a chance to read Katie's book, she has a lot on different objectives that you could talk to them about and how you can wrap metrics around that. So perhaps think along those sort of lines. Does that answer the question, or? Okay,
let me put it in a different way. So what I'm saying is, where should the role of a media measurement firm stops? If I talk about those digital arms of the agencies, they start with listening, they measure that, and they also engage with the customers. So should a measurement firm also be doing all the 3 roles, or should we stop at the measurement?
Is this similar to what Mazen was talking about with his 5th model in terms of he's helping his clients with their engagement as well? Yeah. My personal view is that PR agencies encroach into our space and have done for a number of years, and welcome to our PR agency members of AMEC. But I don't see any problem with a specialist monitoring and measurement company, particularly in social media, encroaching back into their space, particularly what Mazen was talking about in terms of the way that he's helping his clients with their engagement sounds very sensible. In that session, I did ask them the question about would that be a business model that would last long into the future? Because, and I talked about Jay Baer's book, Jay Baer's written a book called The Now Revolution, where he talks about how can a company cope with the pressure of comments and criticism and praise and everything coming at it right now. And the only way you can do that is you need to have, you need to open up the floodgates of permission to communicate across everybody in your organization. You need to train them as well. But the risk, I guess, is that if you're an organization that's effectively outsourced, is I'm not sure that's going to work forever. I think it will work now, and that was what Mazen's point was. If it works now, why not make some money from it and do it? But will it work forever? I'm not sure that it will, but I don't see any problem with doing it now at all. I guess you also need to bear in mind that one of the traditional things that's been good about us is that any measurement company has always been able to work for an entire industry, so you can work for all of the competitors, because we're not selling ideas, we're just measuring what's in the public domain. But if you start doing engagement and advice, you might find that conflicts of interest will restrict your marketplace. So I should think you need to think about that as well. Jeremy.
Jeremy Thompson from Gorkana. Thank you, Richard. Very engaging as always. Just a quick question for you. Is our methodology recognised by other industry trade bodies like the CIPR or PRCA? And are we working with them to get their kind of seal of approval?
Philip is the representative of the CIPR social media group, is that right? Absolutely right. I wouldn't say it's... I don't think any methodology is industry recognised yet, and I think that's what we're working towards. There's certainly work going on with the CIPR, with the PRCA, but with these other organisations beyond obviously just the UK, across America and across the globe, but also beyond that as well into other marketing disciplines. So that's all part of the work in process to get that recognition. What we're not going to do is say to people, this is how you have to do it, because, and this is a number or this is a single metric, but this is an approved approach. And we saw that coming out of the States last week, where the IPR finally has set some standards on traditional media measurement in terms of, it doesn't say this is how you have to do it, but it says this is what these different terms mean, and this is how you should think about doing your measurement. It's more that kind of approach, and I think that's where we'll end up.